Hey everybody, DeLongshot Signatures here. I wanted to do a recap video of the 2022 NFL Draft prospects that I was able to get signatures back from before they started their NFL careers. So the qualifiers for this is that these guys must be obtained TTM or in person. I don't have any person for this year. And I have to receive them before they make their NFL debut. I can send to them whenever, but if they've played their first regular season or postseason game, then that doesn't count. Preseason still counts because that doesn't count towards anything. But I have a few players here. It doesn't include anyone that I purchased an autograph of, received via trade, or pulled from a box either. So these are all TTM guys that I got during their college season, pre-draft, and post-draft. So we're going to start off with round one. I believe it's 3 players that I have here. First one was selected 14th overall. He was a safety coming out of Notre Dame. I had Kyle Hamilton, selected by the Baltimore Ravens. He had himself a pretty decent rookie season. Definitely started off a little slow. Didn't get a ton of playing time at the start there, but he got better and more comfortable with his role along the way. He finished the season with 62 tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble. He also received some additional playing time being on the special teams unit. So, all in all, looks like he could be a pretty good player. He was one of the highest graded Ravens rookies from this past year. Second one was selected 20th overall by the Pittsburgh Steelers. You already know who it is, but this is quarterback from Pittsburgh, Kenny Pickett. This was looking to be like one of those drafts where there could have been no quarterback selected in the first round, but the Steelers felt that they saw enough out of Kenny Pickett to take him 20th overall, only quarterback to go in the first round. The plan wasn't to start him immediately. They definitely wanted to develop him. There was still some stuff he needed to learn to be ready at the pro level. But I don't remember if Trubisky got injured or benched, but he did come in to play a game. Didn't do well in that one. I think he threw 3 picks against the Jets. But he made his start the next week and did pretty. He struggled at first, definitely. Lots of turnovers, low completion percentage, wasn't really scoring, but he was finding some touchdowns on the ground. But after, I think it was week 11, he started to really put everything together, and he played a little bit more conservatively, but it was a lot more smart play, not taking too many risks, and really did well at the end. He had 7 wins in total on the season. He helped the Pittsburgh Steelers keep their winning season streak alive. They went 9-8 by the end of it. Passed for 2,404 yards and had a 7-9 touchdown to interception ratio, which doesn't look good, but most of those interceptions came in his first few starts, and he started turning over the ball a lot less in the second half of the season. The last first round pick that I had gotten a signature from was selected 30th overall by the eventual Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. This was a defensive end from Purdue, George Karlaftis. He was another player that was brought along slowly, but he showed his pass rushing skills at the end of the season with 5.5 sacks in the last 7 regular season games. He also got a sack against the Bengals in the playoffs, despite seeing less playing time once they got to the postseason. And like I said, he won Super Bowl 57 with the Kansas City Chiefs. Then we had one player that was drafted in the second round. This guy went 36 overall to the New York Jets. It was running back from Iowa State, Breece Hall. Breece Hall kind of had a big what could have been season, starting off as the backup running back, but getting quite a few touches early on in the season. But unfortunately, lost his rookie season to a torn ACL and meniscus in Week 7 against the Broncos after scoring a touchdown there. Just really, really unfortunate. The Jets struggled immensely after losing Hall and some other players, and their quarterback play dropped. Ended up being a pretty messy season for the team. But with Breece Hall on the field, they looked pretty good. It looked like they could run a pretty solid, well-rounded offense. So getting him back will be huge for next season. And this is one of the best Jets draft classes that they've had in a while. They had in the first round both of the offensive player, or excuse me, both of the rookies of the year, with Sauce Gardner on defense and Garrett Wilson on offense. Breece Hall had a full rookie season and played, about at the level that he was showing he could in the 2 games that he started. He could have been in contention for that Offensive Rookie of the Year award as well. He finished the year with 5 total touchdowns, 463 rushing yards, and 218 receiving yards. So he was a pretty good threat both on the ground and in the air. We had some 3rd-round picks. First one was selected 80th overall, which is pretty fitting because that's the number he took into the pros. But he was drafted by the Denver Broncos. This is tight end from UCLA, Greg Dulcich. He was one of the few bright spots on the offense for the Broncos this year. Just a very, very miserable season to watch as a Broncos fan. But he started the season on IR after a hamstring injury kept him out of most of training camp. They brought him along slowly, but once he started getting some regular playing time, he really showed what he was capable of. Finished the season as the 3rd leading receiver for the Denver Broncos, despite only playing in 10 games. He had 411 yards on 33 receptions and 2 receiving touchdowns. The next 3rd-round pick was a guy that was considered to be a first-round talent. So it was a little bit shocking to see him fall as far as he did. But the team that took him really felt that they had got a steal for the pick, and that could still be. This guy definitely struggled. He was selected 86 overall, quarterback out of Liberty, Malik Willis. The Tennessee Titans picked him up, which was one of the very surprising moves of the draft. Like I said before the draft, a lot of experts kind of had him as a first-round talent. He's a very versatile runner. He can extend the play. The biggest question was coming down to his accuracy, his decision-making. He's got a strong arm, but when you don't really have the accuracy to go with it, that strong arm doesn't really mean a whole lot. And it made sense why he was taken later and not in the first round once he did get some playing time, unfortunately, as he's a very raw passer. And the Titans knew this, so I think he started his first NFL game against the Kansas City Chiefs, in which they almost won. It was a very run-centered, run-heavy offense that they ran, and he just really struggled with completing passes to receivers. Granted, the Titans didn't have that many receivers at that point. A lot of injuries, a lot of depth guys, a lot of guys signed off the street throughout most of the year, kept dealing with the injury bug. But he only started 3 games before being benched for Josh Dobbs towards the end of the season. They still had hopes to make the playoffs. They figured signing a guy who, unproven in the NFL, but definitely had a little bit more upside in the passing game, would be a better option than throwing this rookie in the fire and continuing to have him struggle. He finished the year with 1 win, 276 passing yards. He had a rushing TD, and he had 3 interceptions with no passing touchdowns. Moving on to round 4, we had several selections here, including 3 in a row when it was all said and done. First one was selected 128th overall by the Baltimore Ravens. This is tight end from Iowa State, Charlie Kolar. He spent half the season on IR, so didn't get much practice time throughout the year. And what sucked was that when he did come back and was able to play. I think he only ended up playing in 2 games in a crowded tight end group with Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, as well as another tight end named Oliver ahead of him, all of whom played pretty well this season. Andrews, of course, a Pro Bowl level guy. Isaiah Likely was, I think he was drafted before Kohler was. So he didn't get to see much playing time, but he did get to have a few plays, ending the season with 4 catches for 49 yards. The very next pick, same position, different team, was selected 129th overall, tight end from Wisconsin, Jake Ferguson, was selected by the Dallas Cowboys. Of course, they had already kind of had their tight end group figured out. I want to say they franchise tagged a guy, but always good to keep young tight ends on the roster to develop and maybe take over that starting role one day. Not sure if that's going to be the case for Ferguson, but they do seem to find some upside in him as a red zone threat because he was generally on the field once the Cowboys were getting close to the end zone. So he can do some run blocking, but he's also capable of snagging in some passes for a touchdown. He had 19 catches for 174 yards in 2 touchdowns on the year. Again, he was used in limited sets, but as a rookie, and knowing that there was quite a bit he would need to improve on in order to be a full-time NFL player, that was kind of expected that he wouldn't see too much playing time. But I think he got a little bit more of a role as the season went along. And with the next pick, a punter was selected by a team who had made a pick 2 spots before. This is punter from Penn State, Jordan Stout, who was selected by the Baltimore Ravens. This is one of the few that I received after the draft. I sent out a whole bunch and saw very few of those come back, but still cool to get a punter. Always love getting the special teams guys. He beat out veteran Sam Cook in training camp to take on the punter role for the Baltimore Ravens. I believe Cook ended up retiring as well before the season started, joined either the coaching staff or the front office of the Baltimore Ravens, and kind of mentored Stout throughout the year. He played in all 17 games, averaging 45.9 yards per punt, and he had 26 of his punts end up inside of the 20, nearly half of the punts that he had. A few picks later, this was kind of a surprise one, but given the team that he was picked by, just about everything that they do in the draft is at least a little bit surprising. But quarterback from Western Kentucky, Bailey Zappi, was selected by the New England Patriots. Zappi really helped out his stock transferring from FCS to FBS, going to Western Kentucky for one season, where he set the FBS record for both passing yards in a season and passing touchdowns. He led one of the best, or obviously the best, passing attacks ever seen at the FBS level. It was just awesome to watch him. But considering it was a 1-year thing, it was at a pass-happy school, and he played in FCS before, the idea was that he'd probably be a late 6th or 7th round pick, if he even got selected at all. So to go in the 4th round to the Patriots is a very Patriots-like move, but they liked what they saw in him and selected him to be the backup for the team. Another thing that was kind of surprising was that he did get to play in some games after Mac Jones was injured for a short time, and he looked well. He played well in relief after Jones got injured, and then in the 2 games that he started, he won both of them. Looked really good, and this led to some QB controversy once Mac Jones was ready to return, and I believe Jones was actually benched in his first game back in favor of Zappi, but Zappi struggled in that game. They obviously lost, and the Patriots stuck with Mac Jones for the rest of the year. But Zappi's going to be one of these Patriots backups that people are going to talk about for some time other coaches might become interested in him, and I could see him, probably getting traded for in a couple years by another QB needy team who feel like he did enough to show that he could play at the NFL level. But regardless, I was really happy to see him play at all, considering it looked like it was really unlikely, just given the circumstances and uh, kind of how they treat quarterbacks that make jumps and have 1 year wonder seasons. So that was really cool to watch. Then we had a fifth round selection. I believe he was the only guy in the fifth round that I had this year. But a really awesome one. Underrated season. This is running back from BYU, Tyler Algier, who was selected by the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons have had a pretty decent track record recently of selecting running backs and making them into pretty decent players. You can think about it with Devontae Freeman, Tevin Coleman, what was his name, Ido Smith or something like that. So overall, they've done really, really well with these guys, and Algier is no exception. He was one of two rookie running backs to rush for over 1,000 yards, nearly won that title amongst the rookies, but missed it by like 20 or 30 yards or something like that. Didn't score much. The Falcons definitely struggled to find the end zone, but he still had 4 touchdowns in total for the season, and just all around looked like a really solid running back, a guy that they could have help out whoever their next quarterback is, whether that guy's on the roster or not already. Had, I think it's just 1 6th-round pick. Not too many people are going to know about this guy. He unfortunately got injured before the season started, but selected 192 overall. This is tight end from Youngstown State, Andrew Ogletree. He was the second tight end selected by the Indianapolis Colts after the retirement of Jack Doyle. They definitely had a need for getting a new starter. Mo Alley-Cox came in as the presumptive number 1, but they definitely wanted another guy to back up and eventually probably take on that role. Drew Ogletree tore his ACL in August during training camp, so he didn't get to have that rookie season or get a chance to fight for that role. But given how much of a mess the Colts offense was this year across the board, including at the tight end position, next year could be just as open of an opportunity for him to earn some playing time and take over that role. So we'll have to see how he does coming back. And then we're going to end off here with the 2 selections from the 7th round. I'm not going to talk about any of the undrafted guys. I had quite a few that were signed on for training camp and preseason. Very few, maybe like one of them, ended up making a roster and not much of an impact. So we're just not going to talk about them. But the first selection that we had that came in the 7th round was selected 258th overall. Almost looked like this guy wasn't going to get selected. This is wide receiver from Nebraska, Samori Toure. Toure originally started his career with the Montana Grizzlies, transferred up to FBS for a season with Nebraska. He played okay, but Nebraska struggled overall, so he didn't have the breakout season that I think he was hoping to have. But the Packers saw enough in him to bring him in as one of the 3 wide receivers that they drafted. He only played in 4 games, so he's definitely got some work to do to earn the coaching staff's approval to get him into some more playing time. But he did look impressive in Week 8 with a 37-yard touchdown against the Buffalo Bills on a scramble drill play. He got himself wide open. Aaron Rodgers put it right on him, and so he scored his first NFL touchdown. That was the only one he had for the year. Didn't really have too many more catches with the emergence of guys like Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. But going into next year, he could be a nice depth piece for them and maybe even take over one of the roles if any of the guys don't develop like they're hoping. And lastly, the biggest story that was for the rookie class this year, it seems, selected 262nd last overall quarterback from Iowa State, Brock Purdy. This was a guy who, I'm going to sound like Chris Collinsworth saying that. Here's a guy who came in to the draft just hoping to get selected. He had a very similar path to Kenny Pickett in that he had an extra year to come back and play due to COVID and everything like that. And he played solid before. He wasn't fantastic. He wasn't blowing everyone out of the water, but he was a solid quarterback. And so he returned for one more season to hopefully improve his draft stock, to get noticed by a team. And scouts were looking for something like they saw from Kenny Pickett, where he had a big, coming out party and, improved statistically and really showed what he was capable of when, the pressure was on him. Brock Purdy kind of had a standard season for himself. The Iowa State didn't play as well that year, so his stock fell, and it was surprising that he wasn't getting selected in the 5th or 6th round, so it was almost looking like he wasn't going to get selected at all. But the 49ers had the last pick, and they felt, you know what, we've got Jimmy G, who's going to be a really good backup for us. We got Trey Lance, who's our future. But you can always go for another quarterback, a young quarterback, in the late rounds. Even if he doesn't pan out, no one's going to remember Mr. Irrelevant. And Brock Purdy turned all of that around after injuries to Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo, put him as the starter, at least for the time being, and he took it and ran with it. He went 5-0 at the end of the season to help the 49ers enter the playoffs, still playing hot. He was throwing for at least 2 touchdowns a game, smart with the ball, making good decisions. He's athletic, he can move, and even though he had one of the funniest moments of the season where he went to hand off the ball and turned to the wrong side, that was really probably the biggest mistake you could say that he made all year long. But he played well. He looked like a seasoned veteran out there, and it was just surprising to watch. But nothing ever really seemed too big for him. And even when the team was struggling, he'd eventually calm them down and they'd get going, looking to George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel when he was available, to make big plays and keep the team going. And he looked, when the awards were being announced for the NFL End of Year Awards and the nominees, he was announced as one of the finalists for the Offensive Rookie of the Year award, which a lot of people debated against because he didn't play enough games. But really, when you think about it, there weren't that many rookies having stellar seasons other than the eventual winner. Garrett Wilson and other guys were getting injured. So it made sense. He didn't win it, but he did finish 3rd in voting, which really says a lot about what he did for, playing 5 regular season games, or starting 5 regular season games. He did have a little bit of playing time before that, in a blowout. Unfortunately, the season came to an end in the NFC Championship after Brock Purdy tore his UCL, and he came out of the game. And then Josh Johnson, the 4th string QB and the last QB on the roster, exited with a concussion. Purdy came back in, but given his torn UCL, he couldn't throw the ball anymore. So it stifled their offense, and they were already behind and trying to go up against the number 1 team in the NFC. If you can't pass against them, you really didn't have a shot. So it sucks to watch such a fantastic story come to an end like that for this season. And torn UCL is nothing to mess with. I don't believe he's made a decision yet on how he's going to work on rehabbing it, whether he's going to get surgery or just go through the rehab. Either option is going to take quite a while to get through. So it doesn't look like he could be the starter, at least at the beginning of next season. But you just got to hope for a guy that played as well as he did, played as smart as he did, and, didn't make it about himself, made it about the team and just had fun with it. you really hope to see a guy like that get another shot. But all in all, a really fun season to watch for the rookies, and surprised by how many of them actually got to play this year. Because I've had a couple years prior where got some rookies that maybe saw 1 or 2 games and you don't hear about them anymore. But this year worked out pretty well for me, especially in the quarterback department. I think all four of the quarterbacks that I got back ended up starting at some point. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Helps me out a lot. Best luck with your guys' collecting. Take care.